What would you do if the man your girlfriend cheated on you with sent you a thank you basket? And when you looked closer, you realized he'd paid for it using your own credit card. Sounds like a sick joke, right? Like something out of a dark comedy where the universe is rubbing your face in it. But for me it wasn't a joke, it was real. That basket sat on my kitchen counter one Saturday morning, bow-tied, full of fruit and chocolates, and tucked inside the envelope was my credit card receipt with my name on it. And the worst part? He wrote me a note that said, "Thanks for everything, champ. I swear if you'd been in that kitchen with me, you would have heard my brain short-circuit." I stood there in my sweatpants, coffee half poured, staring at this wicker monstrosity like it was a bomb that had landed in my life. I didn't know whether to laugh, scream, throw it through the window, or call the police. But maybe I should back up, because if I'm going to tell this story properly, you need the full picture of how it got to this point. Her name was Lauren. We'd been together for almost 3 years. We weren't perfect. Who is? But I thought we were solid. We had routines, inside jokes, plans for the future. I'd saved her contact in my phone as my person. And yeah, maybe I worked too much. Maybe I wasn't always the guy who planned the spontaneous getaways or wrote the handwritten notes. But I was there. I was committed. I thought she was too. Then came the little signs. The late-night girls' dinners that didn't add up. The texts she guarded like they were state secret. The sudden obsession with a perfume she never used around me. I told myself I was overthinking. You don't want to be the paranoid boyfriend, right? So I stuffed those doubts down, smiled, and kept paying the bills, kept making sure the fridge was stocked, kept swiping my card to cover dinners out, because I thought that's what you do when you love someone. The truth came crashing down one Thursday night. She left her laptop open on the couch while she showered. I wasn't snooping. I swear to you I wasn't. But the screen lit up with a notification, an email subject line that read, "Last night was unforgettable." My chest seized. I clicked, and just like that, the floor gave way. Paragraphs of intimacy written to a man I'd never met, but who clearly knew my girlfriend better than I did. I confronted her. I wish I could tell you she denied it, broke down to me to believe her. But she didn't. She just looked tired, almost relieved. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said. "Like there's a good way to find out." The fight that followed, I can still hear it echoing in my head. Accusations, half-truths, me asking what 100 different ways, her throwing back excuses that all boiled down to the same thing. She was done, she'd moved on, and apparently, I'd been footing the bill for both of them without realizing it. I left that night, packed a bag, crashed at a buddy's place. She kept the apartment, the furniture, the dishes we'd picked out together. I told myself I'd get my things eventually, but honestly, I couldn't face walking back into that place where everything now felt like a lie. That brings us to the basket. 2 weeks after I left, I checked my mail and there it was. A giant wicker basket, wrapped in cellophane, with one of those oversized bows on top. At first I thought maybe it was a peace offering from her. Maybe guilt had finally caught up to her. But when I tore open the envelope, the note inside stopped me cold. "Thanks for everything, champ." The handwriting was cocky, slanted, like the words themselves were smirking at me. And then I saw the receipt stapled to the back. My credit card number. He had sent me a thank you basket, using my own money. I can't tell you what went through my head in that moment. Rage like I've never felt before. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped the whole thing. My heart pounded in my ear. The gall, the arrogance, the sheer audacity of it. It was like being humiliated all over again. But this time with confetti on top. I wanted to march straight to their place and hurl that basket at their front door. I wanted to call him, scream until my throat bled. I wanted to destroy something, anything to match the destruction going on inside me. But I didn't. I sat down at my kitchen table, staring at that basket for what felt like hours. And slowly my rage gave way to something else. Clarity. This wasn't just about the money. It wasn't even just about the betrayal. This was about power. He thought he'd stripped me of mine. He thought he was rubbing my face in the fact that he'd won. But by laughing in my face through that note, what he really did was show me exactly who he was. A man so insecure, so desperate for validation, that he had to turn my pain into a trophy. So I made a decision. If he wanted to play games, I wasn't going to play on his level. I was going to rise above it. The next morning I called the credit card company, reported fraud, explained the situation. They cancelled the charge, issued me a new card, and promised to investigate. That stupid basket. It was free, but I didn't stop there. I started combing through my statements, line by line. And you know what I found? Dozens of charges I hadn't made. Hotel stays, fancy dinners, concert tickets. All the little dates she'd had with him funded by me. My stomach turned as the list grew longer. But at the same time, I felt a grim satisfaction. Because now I had proof. I filed a report, sent copies of the statements, and within weeks the walls started closing in on him. Fraud isn't just a word, it's a crime. And suddenly Missed Thanks for Everything champ wasn't smirking anymore. The day I heard he'd been arrested for credit card fraud was the day I felt like I could finally breathe again. Not because I needed revenge, but because justice, real, tangible justice, had finally entered the picture. But the story didn't end there. Months later, I ran into her. At the grocery store of all places. She looked worn down, hair messy, eyes ringed with exhaustion. She saw me, froze, then tried to smile. "Hey," she said softly, like nothing had happened. I just nodded, kept walking, didn't need to say a word, because in that moment I realized the thank you basket, the credit card fraud, the humiliation. They weren't weights I carried anymore. They were weights she and her partner would be carrying for the rest of their lives. And me, I walked out lighter, stronger, because here's the truth. Sometimes the lowest point of your life, the moment you feel like the biggest fool alive, is actually the turning point. The day you stop letting other people write your story and start writing it yourself again. So yeah, her affair partner sent me a thank you basket with my own credit card attached, and at the time, it felt like the universe was mocking me. But looking back, it was the universe setting me free. That was part one. But if you're still with me, I'll take you into part two. Because what happened after, the rebuilding, the new paths I never expected, the people I met because of that whole fiasco, is just as wild. After the fraud case wrapped up, I found myself with more time and energy than I'd had in years. All that space I used to fill with worrying about her, providing for us, checking my statements for charges I didn't recognize, that space became mine again. And I filled it with things I'd forgotten I loved. I started running races, signed up for a half marathon. My legs burned, my lungs screamed, but every mile felt like I was reclaiming ground I'd lost. I started cooking again, not just reheating leftovers, but actual meals, experimenting with recipes I'd bookmarked years ago. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with, and slowly the man I'd been before, all the chaos started to reappear. Then something happened that shook me again, but in a good way. At one of those races, I met someone, not in a cinematic. She tripped and I caught her way. More like we were both standing in line for the water table, sweaty and exhausted, and we started chatting. Her name was Rachel. She was funny, sharp, and had this way of looking at me that made me feel like she actually saw me. Not the man who'd been cheated on, not the guy who'd been humiliated with a thank you basket, but just me. We started running together, then grabbing coffee, then dinner, and before I knew it I was laughing again. Really laughing in a way I hadn't in years. I was scared, of course, scared of repeating old mistakes, of giving too much, of being blindsided again. But Rachel was patient. She never asked me to forget my past, but she reminded me every day that it didn't define my future. And here's the wildest part. Months into dating, she asked me one night, "What's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you?" I laughed, shook my head, and told her everything. The charges, the basket, the note. When I finished, she just stared at me, then burst out laughing. Not at me, but at the sheer absurdity of it all. "That's insane," she said. "But you know what? You came out stronger. And honestly, that's kind of hot." I realized then that the story I'd once been ashamed of was actually proof of my resilience. It wasn't a scar to hide. It was a battle I'd survived. So when I think back to that morning in my kitchen, staring at that thank you basket, with my credit card receipt stapled to it, I don't see humiliation anymore. I see the moment everything started to change. Because sometimes the universe delivers your freedom in the most twisted package imaginable, and sometimes the best thank you basket is the life you build after. After the fraud report and the basket fiasco, you'd think the story would just end there, right? Tie it up with a bow, justice served. Lesson learned. But life doesn't end with neat chapters. It drags the mess out. tests you in ways you don't expect, and throws curveballs just when you think you've got your footing back. For weeks after that basket, I couldn't walk into my own kitchen without feeling sick. Every time I saw that counter, I remembered the bow, the cellophane, the smug handwriting on that note. Thanks for everything, Chan. I couldn't even drink coffee without feeling the bitterness in more ways than one. I tried to laugh it off, with friends, but the truth is, I'd sit up at night staring at the ceiling, grinding my teeth, replaying the audacity of it. The fraud case helped. Don't get me wrong, cancelling the card, seeing charges reversed. That was a relief. But relief doesn't erase humiliation. And humiliation has a way of seeping into every corner of your life. I remember going to work and sitting in meetings, hearing my co-workers talk about budgets and deadlines, and all I could think about was that basket. How could I care about quarterly projections when some guy out there had turned my love, my trust, into a punchline? It gnawed at me, day after day. Then one night I ran into him again. It was at a bar downtown, one of those spots where everyone shouts over the music and pretends the drinks are worth triple what they cost. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I'd tagged along with a buddy who swore this place is chill. Spoiler, it wasn't. I was leaning against the bar when I heard that voice. Cocky, loud, filling the room like it owned the air. My stomach dropped. I turned, and there he was. Same smirk, same swagger, but no basket this time. Just him, surrounded by his crew, acting like the king of some tiny kingdom. He saw me, of course he did. And he grinned, lifted his glass and called out champ. The people around him laughed. Maybe they didn't even know why, it was just the tone, the inside joke vibe, but I knew. My fists clenched, so tight I felt my nails dig crescents into my palms. For a split second, every muscle in my body screamed at me to swing, to shut that grin off his face. But then I caught myself. Hitting him wouldn't erase the basket, wouldn't erase the note, wouldn't erase the fact that he'd already shown me who he was. So instead, I looked him dead in the eye, raised my beer and said, "Enjoy it while it lasts." And then I turned back to my buddy like the man didn't even exist. It killed him. I saw it. That smirk faltered, just for a second. Because men like him, they live for the reaction. They feed off your anger, your humiliation. When you don't give it to them, you starve them. And that's when I realized, ignoring him was the bigger punch. That night, walking home, I felt lighter, not fixed, not healed, but like I'd finally gotten one step ahead. Still, the road wasn't straight. There were nights I slipped, nights I'd scroll through old photos of her, of us, wondering how the hell we'd gone from that to this. Nights I'd wake up sweating from dreams where she came back begging forgiveness, and I actually said yes. I hated those dreams more than anything, because they made me realize forgiveness was still buried somewhere in me, even when I didn't want it to be. Then came another twist. She reached out. It was a random Tuesday when my phone buzzed with her name. I stared at the screen like it was haunted. Part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room. Part of me wanted to answer, just to hear what excuse she'd spin this time. In the end, curiosity won. "Hey," she said when I picked up. Her voice was softer than I remembered, almost shaky. "Can we talk?" Every cell in my body screamed, "Don't do it." But I said yes. We met at a cafe the next day. She looked different, thinner, paler, hair pulled back like she hadn't had the energy to style it. She ordered tea, but barely touched it. And then she told me. They were over. He'd cheated on her, lied to her, used her. All the things she'd done to me, he'd done to her. Tenfold. She started crying right there at the table, mascara streaking down her face. "I made a mistake," she said. "I should have never left you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the basket, the charges, the nights I lay awake wondering why I wasn't enough. And just like that, the pity burned off. I leaned back, folded my arms and said, "You're right. You made a mistake, but it's not mine to fix." Her face crumpled. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. And then I stood up, dropped a few bills on the table for her untouched tea, and walked out. That was the real closure, not the fraud case, not the bar, not even the basket. It was looking her in the eye and realizing she had no power over me anymore. After that, things shifted. I stopped replaying the humiliation on loop, stopped grinding my teeth over the note. Stopped seeing myself as the fool who got used. I started seeing myself as the man who survived it. I picked up new hobbies, started running races, signed up for cooking classes, even joined a hiking group, which sounds like the lamest divorced dad energy move ever. But it turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life. Because that's where I met Rachel. She was standing at the trailhead, adjusting her backpack straps, and she cracked a joke about how she hoped no one was expecting her to carry snacks for the whole group. I laughed. We fell into step together, and by the time we reached the summit, I felt like I'd known her forever. With Rachel, everything was easy. No games, no secrets, no baskets of humiliation waiting at my door. Just honesty, laughter, and the kind of comfort you don't realize you're missing until you find it. One night, months into dating, she asked me what the craziest thing that ever happened to me was. I hesitated, then told her the whole story. The affair, the fraud, the basket, the note. When I finished, I braced myself for pity, for her to look at me like I was some tragic figure. But instead, she laughed. Not a cruel laugh, just this warm, incredulous laugh that said, "You've been through hell and somehow came out funnier. That's insane," she said. "But you know what? The fact that you survived it, that you can sit here and tell me about it without crumbling, that's kind of amazing." And in that moment, I realized something I wish I'd known all along. Humiliation doesn't define you. How you respond to it does. So yeah, her affair partner sent me a thank you basket with my own credit card attached. At the time it felt like the cruelest twist life could throw at me. But now, looking back, I see it differently. That basket wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of a life I never would have built otherwise. Because sometimes the ugliest gift you get is the one that sets you free.